All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Oh, thank you all. Thank you. Please remain standing. It is a great pleasure to be with you on a Friday. This is our live show. We're on from 11 to 1 in the West, 2 to 4 in the East. You do the arithmetic in all the other time zones. This live show, born of a radio show originally in San Francisco that went away. The entire station went away. And we, of course, were a very popular part of that station. So we thought we'd bring some of the building blocks of it over to YouTube and be fed out as an audio podcast across Spotify, across iHeartRadio, across the Apple podcast platform, and that's where we are today. So it's with that we finish a week that has been very eventful, filled with might I say, troubling policy initiatives and, of course, tragedy with the great loss of life in that crash over the Potomac. We'll be covering more of the specifics there, also talking about these policy matters. Friday brings the Culture Blaster talking movies. Michael Shure reviews the entire week in politics, and Kim will helm the second hour without me. I'm going to be hitting the road.
What?
I know. It's a dream come true for many. Kim will be unimpeded, unencumbered by my presence.
Kim, how are you?
And she will run the show in the second hour. I've got to run to KFI Radio in Los Angeles. So I will be
cutting you loose, shaken free.
Yeah. I will be, I'll be exactly thrown overboard for, that's hour two, though. We got a lot in this first hour. Was there anything I saw? This is kind of fun. Always cool to see this. Shout out to the Tennessee-Kentucky line.
Awesome.
Isaac Darnall. Hello from the Tennessee-Kentucky line, he says. Big shout out to our folks.
That's a pretty red zone, isn't it?
I would think.
Yeah.
I would think. Certainly those states are red. There is some might say, infiltration of Californians to Tennessee in the form of Nashville inhabitants. There are a lot of people moving to Nashville, but I'd need to know more about where Isaac lives to really tell you. I think it's a safe bet, though, as Kim says, that it's a pretty reddish.
Magazone? Yeah.
Magazone, exactly. Kentucky does have a Democratic governor, though, Isaac points out. Yeah. Have they sapped the governor of power there the way they do with the Republican legislators? Typically sap the governor's office of any power once they realize they've lost the election. Anyway, very, very cool that you join us. Thank you for being here. Smash the like button while you're here real quick, and you can get it out of the way.
Iron rod.
Get it out of the way. It costs you nothing, and it helps us in the world of YouTube. Before I get to the helicopter that flew outside its approved flight path, and before I get to some more of the reaction and things that we told you yesterday about Washington National Airport, we had that great aviation expert on yesterday. Before I get to all of that, the near misses that were affecting that area, I'm talking about DCA, that is Reagan National. There just been a near miss the day before.
Yep.
Before I get to that, there was an odd question. You know, they've got this new White House press secretary, this 27-year-old, I don't know. She's a lovely gal. My dad would say, she's a lovely gal. I've got a new press secretary.
Yeah, she's really cute until she opens her mouth. Caroline Levitt. Or leave it. I'm choosing to leave it rather than take it.
I don't think she says leave it.
Yeah, I do.
She was asked about something that I'm sure they've been looking forward to at the White House for some time, and that is the they said celebration. I mean, I think it's kind of you can say celebration, commemoration, whatever. Celebration might be the right word, of Black History Month. So she's asked at the new Trump White House, as they clearly are jihadists against DEI and anything that represents race-targeted aggressive moves of inclusion, they're asked about Black History Month, a time to reflect on the true subjugation and prejudicial nature of America's policy toward Black people. I mean, the troubled history that we have. You don't have to acknowledge that, but you'd think you'd maybe, well, look, we just know the truth, that there is no plan to celebrate Black History Month. Nonetheless, she was given the question, and here is how it went.
As we're dealing with anti-DEI, anti-woke efforts, we understand this administration is thinking about celebrating Black History Month. Have you got any word on that? Anything that you can offer to us?
As far as I know, this White House certainly still intends to celebrate, and we will continue to celebrate American history and the contributions that all Americans, regardless of race, religion, or creed, have made to our great country, and America is back.
What?
And America
You
is
just
back.
don't get it, do you? You don't.
Well, I mean, it's the, look, I'm sure the reality is that they're going to have a lot of the Black Lives Matter protesters there at the White House to kick off Black History Month, and we will keep you posted. But that was, she's unflappable. I'm sure that's one of the reasons she's there. Absolutely unflappable. I am, excuse me. This is the Coachella Valley Coffee. They are our official sponsors and the official coffee of the show. I will tell you that I've gone to the chit. Yeah, I've gone to the chit month today. Yeah, so
that's a good one. That's my favorite.
Yeah, it really is strong. Yeah, so if you want to get a mug, just like Uncle Mark has, you have them at getmarkmerch.com. You don't have to, but the coffee tastes great out of anything you use. Very, very good. And chit all the way. I love it. So that's the story on the new administration and their disposition. I mean, we were all wondering what they were going to do for Black History Month. And I guess they have quite a plan in place to celebrate the way that many who put aside Black History Month first intended, which is to pretty much celebrate all Americans of all ethnicities. Right. It should be changed to All Ethnicities Month. That's
Isn't
really
that,
what it should be changed to.
I mean, isn't the whole all ethnicities every day? The reason we highlight, or White History Month is every day. The reason we highlight certain groups in certain months is because they're historically underrepresented when we're teaching history.
Thank you. Thank you for that liberal crap that everybody.
Have you ever been a member of the Chinese Communist Party?
Yeah, thank you for a little.
You got me.
Yeah, I know how you guys are.
The Mark Thompson Show.
How about the tariffs? I know you're getting ready. Tariffs are coming. I will get to the helicopter and plane crash story in just a moment, but I did want to note that these tariffs are supposedly going to launch tomorrow. I mean, again, for those who say, well, he says a lot of stuff, but he actually doesn't do it. No, he says it and then he does it. And Trump saying yesterday he plans to follow through tomorrow, Saturday, on his threat to impose 25% tariffs on goods from Mexico and Canada. I want to step out of this story for a moment and just make one point. Trump's a bully, as you know, and Trump's now got the biggest military in the world, the strongest nation in the world, an incredibly robust economy, and all of those things allow him to be the biggest bully on the world playground. But he's not bullying the countries that are really our adversaries. He's not bullying China. I understand he speaks in ways such that he wants to wall things off, that in effect would give China access to things, TikTok, for example, other IP associated with technology. And Russia I'd suggest he's kind of tepid in his verbiage there, but you let's say that he is smack-talking Russia, fine. But the thing he really does is he goes after who? Our allies. He goes after our friends.
Which historically we've never had a problem with. We live on the same continent together, on the same land mass. We've been happy neighbors for the most part. And here he comes, shaking that up.
So the idea that you can smack talk your neighbors is one thing. But now, I mean, and again, it's more than just neighbors. As I say, they are, and Kim correctly notes, we have a fine relationship with the Canadians and the Mexicans, huge trade partners, particularly with Mexico, a huge source of labor, particularly from Mexico. We've talked about that ad nauseum. And so these sweeps that they are doing, well, maybe you could have certainly a healthier immigration policy. I'll remind you, there was a bipartisan immigration proposal that Trump himself single-handedly KO'd because he felt it would be bad for him politically if that passed. The reality is you are destabilizing the region, and it's wildly destabilizing to go after your allies. That's what he's doing. He's going after the NATO countries. He went after Panama and continues to go after Panama. So you can smack talk Panama. You can dominate Panama. Rubio now going to Panama, and Colombia. He went after them. I get it. You can smack talk Colombia, and you can smack talk them in a way that gets them to cave. You can threaten and get them to fold, which is exactly what they did. But that's destabilizing for this part of the world, and it doesn't help things overall. And ultimately, it will isolate us, America, because these nations that we're close to and we have good relations with and we have cooperative agreements with, they're all of a sudden in an adversarial kind of stance with America. It makes no sense from a power situation that you see emerging involving America in the Trumpian world, and it makes no sense from a market standpoint either. These tariffs are inflationary. So already you're seeing that the Fed is unable to lower rates because they're already observing inflationary tendencies that will only be supercharged by these tariffs. So to review, smack-talking your neighbors, smack-talking your weaker allies and friendly countries is destabilizing. It gets you nothing, a predictable fold and giving in by those countries. But ultimately, once you inflict on Mexico and Canada with these vague declarations as to what you want, it's fentanyl and illegal immigrant passage. You want them to solve those problems? And meantime, 25% tariffs? It just doesn't track. And I promise you, people who are in Trump's administration, who are at all competent, know this. They may not want to tell the king that, but they know this. Now, again, there's a paucity of competence within the Trump administration. Very few are really competent. I mean, they are taking apart government. I get it. But it doesn't take much to wreck government. It doesn't take much to wreck the place. It takes more to run the place. So I know that they are aware of this at Trump's Treasury. And even those who are casually acquainted with the way the economy works know that this is ridiculous. But no one will tell Trump this. Anyway, the news broke today. Albert, you can run the little announcement it made. Again, it's kind of lost in the mix of other stuff, the plane crash, et cetera. But these tariffs supposedly are going to go into effect tomorrow.
In remarks yesterday, Trump said he will be putting the tariffs in place tomorrow, citing illegal immigration, drugs, and trade deficits as the reasons for them. The president, however, did not say whether the tariffs would apply to American imports of Canadian oil. To talk about this, let's.
So the other thing that's happening, just because he said it would happen, and I think he follows through on a lot of stuff. It's not just smack talk. I mean, the Greenland thing, you didn't think it was possibly something he was taking seriously.
Well,
It is.
It almost seems like we're just going to say this so you guys can look over here at this big thing, this outrageous thing, while we, do all the underhanded stuff. So it almost seemed too outrageous to be true.
I mean, and I think there's an element of that as well. I think it is a distraction. I mean, you've got Kash Patel, who's trying to get across the finish line as the FBI director, and he has an honest-to-goodness enemies list. I mean, he is the very definition alongside some of these others. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard among them, and Hegseth, who did get through, perhaps leading the parade, who are there because they are Trump loyalists, and they will use what they have within the administrative state that they are part of to go after Trump's enemies. They've already done it. Look at what's happened at the Justice Department. They dump all of those career prosecutors who are working under Jack Smith. I mean, these are lawyers who were given an assignment. The assignment was articulated by Jack Smith. I mean, they're not jihadists. These are government employees. And in any case, Marco Rubio saying that President Trump's wish to acquire Greenland is serious and rooted in national security. Their concerns about China's interest in the region. Rubio said this is not a joke. Like what he's saying is pretty accurate. People have been talking about it for years. This is not about acquiring land for the purpose of acquiring land. This is in our national interest, Rubio said. It needs to be solved. President Trump's put it out there what he intends to do, which is to purchase it. Okay. This isn't Stormy Daniels, Mr. President. You can't just offer a bunch of money to Greenland so you can F them. That's not the way it works.
The Mark Thompson Show.
And now to the crash, just some follow-up. And by the way, I will get to the confirmation hearings, and I'm sure Kim will talk to Michael Shure about these as well in the next hour. The helicopter that was involved in this crash, as you may now be aware, was flying outside of its approved flight path. The American Airlines pilots, it suggested, most likely didn't see the helicopter close by as they made their turn toward the runway. And the air traffic controller was juggling two jobs at the same time, unable to keep the helicopter and the plane separated. We're getting bits and pieces because the investigation is still going on, but it appears that pilots and air traffic controllers and safety experts have been warning about this very scenario for years, growing holes in the aviation system that could lead to this kind of crash, killing 67 people. And there were signs that pilots and air traffic controllers at Reagan National were not operating under optimal conditions, according to reporting. The duties of handling air traffic control for helicopters and for planes, this is from the New York Times, at Reagan National on Wednesday night were combined before the deadly crash. Again, air traffic control for helicopters and planes. So that left an air traffic controller handling dual roles. Typically, one person handles both helicopter and plane duties after 9:30 at night. That's when traffic tends to lessen at National Airport. But the supervisor combining those duties sometime before 9:30 allowed one air traffic controller to leave, according to reports. And the crash occurred just before, of course, 9 o'clock at night. There were no unusual factors causing a distraction for controllers that night, apparently, but staffing was not normal for that time of day and volume of traffic. This is a preliminary FAA report. So as we look at details around this crash, it does appear that some of it applies to some of the answers apply to personnel, right? I mean, would seem to involve personnel decisions that were made, and also an increasing demand for more and more flights out of DCA. DCA is a Reagan National, and I've talked to you about that yesterday. We mentioned it with aviation expert Patrick Weil, who was here, because, again, I grew up in Washington and sort of just, it was in the culture. You followed what they were doing. The plan was they build Dulles. Dulles is this very sort of modern-looking place. I was a little kid. I just thought it was the coolest-looking airport, and the idea was that that was going to take pressure off National Airport, and Dulles is in Virginia, and you would then have a bunch of flights coming and going from Dulles, and eventually even DCA might close. National Airport might close, or have a decreased role. But as we mentioned yesterday, the political lobbying was so strong on the part of many legislators who use National Airport. It's so convenient right there in the city. It's right across the way alongside the Jefferson Memorial. And I mean, all of these areas and these monuments that you're so used to seeing, National Airport is surrounded by all of them. And there are military bases around. And you begin to see, wow, it's crowded, and limiting the airspace there. But again, back to the point, politics entered into it, and political hammering away actually got them to increase the number of flights in and out of National Airport. And they actually added a runway. And so in the midst of all of that, you have issues with staffing with air traffic control people. And just the day before, there were near misses. And it wasn't just the day before. There have been near misses at Reagan Washington National Airport. Pilots talk about tight airspace around Washington Airport. Planes have to avoid airspace around the White House, the Pentagon. We spoke of this yesterday with our aviation expert. And Army officials are questioning whether or not military training near airports is something they need to review. The air traffic control in this accident promptly warned the helicopter pilot to stay clear. U.S. commercial pilot Rick Redfern preparing to land at Reagan National Airport about a decade ago. He spotted a bright red Coast Guard helicopter hovering about 50 feet above the Potomac. At night, the light can disorient you, he said. You might not realize what you're seeing, he said. He came close that night to hitting that helicopter. And the collision between a Black Hawk military helicopter and an American Airlines regional jet, that accident we're talking about, that essentially involved the very elements that pilots and those who are piloting aircraft of any type have talked about around Reagan National Airport. Quote, that turn from the eastern side along the river to turn into runway 33 is very, very tight, said Redfern, the pilot, who the decade earlier had almost hit that other chopper. That refers to the same American Airlines that runway 33, that's where the American Airlines jet was arriving before hitting the helicopter. 7 U.S. pilots telling Reuters the landing at Reagan Airport is unique because of congested space, along with the inability to communicate directly with military aircraft. They're all on different channels, as you know. Different channels mean they don't hear communications from the tower to civilian aircraft. And you typically talk to helicopters, apparently, I was just reading this, on a different channel than you talk to commercial aircraft. So, and I'm sure there's a good reason for that, to reduce radio traffic. But in this case, these aircraft that occupied the same space weren't aware of the communications that went to each one of them.
There's a man who's not going to get a lot of love from Trump. It's Missouri Republican Congressman Sam Graves. He is in charge of overseeing the Federal Aviation Administration in the House. And he says diversity initiatives at the agency had nothing to do with this crash. He's a Republican coming out and saying this. He chairs the House Transportation Committee. He's an experienced private pilot. who can fly a commercial airplane. He has a rating to do that if he wanted to. And he said the investigators need to do their work, but he does not believe DEI initiatives played a role, even though Trump is saying they did. So
the Trump press conference was reflective of the way he always is. He, it was a moment of silence, I think. He started and mentioned God a couple of times with prepared remarks, and then he put the prepared remarks aside and went right after DEI, Obama, and Biden.
Yeah.
I mean, it was as gross as you can get. The bodies were still in the water, and this guy's serving this crap up. It was really offensive. I mean, again, there's a tendency to kind of sane wash him or explain away, oh my God, he's just being, Trump's being Trump. I don't like what he tweets, but, I like a strong leader. And I think people were attracted to his strength. But what you really see is, he's not some lovable explain it away guy. He is truly, he's on this political crusade. So everything falls into DEI and anti-Democrats and anti-Obama and Biden. And not to mention, again, none of what he's said is true. It's not even true, that part where he says, well, they had hiring practices in place. When I took office, I upgraded them. They were all about DEI hires. I got rid of that stuff. Actually, no, you didn't. In the first 4 years of your administration, you kept the exact same policies as Obama had in place. Identical. And it was right there on the website. So it's not as though those policies were hidden in any way. Now I get it. You have been joined by the ranks of Project 2025, and DEI is head of that parade. But it's not as though Trump all of a sudden changed things and reconstituted the FAA and the air traffic control fleet. And that's what he's saying he did. He said that in the press conference. But then he went after Pete Buttigieg in that press conference. He said Buttigieg was a BS artist, and it was horrible what happened under Pete Buttigieg. That's always his thing. It was horrible, worst ever. So he said, do you know how badly everything's run since he's run this Department of Transportation? He's a disaster. This is during the press conference yesterday. He was a disaster as a mayor. He ran his city into the ground, and he's a disaster. Now he's just got a good line of bullshit. The Department of Transportation, his government agency charged with regulating civil aviation, while he runs it, 45,000 people, and he's run it right into the ground with his diversity. So I had to say that it's terrible. Well, Buttigieg responded. I guess when you get name-checked by the guy and he, runs you into the ground, you pretty much have to respond. He called the attack despicable. The former transportation secretary said the president should be leading, not lying. We put safety first, drove down close calls, grew air traffic control, had 0 commercial airline crash fatalities, and out of millions of flights on our watch. He also noted that one of Trump's first actions since being inaugurated was, quote, to fire and suspend some of the key personnel who helped keep our skies safe. Buttigieg finished by saying it was time for the president to show actual leadership and explain what he will do to prevent this from happening again. It is more than a footnote that there's a real effort to gut these government agencies, including the FAA. And the FAA leader quit before the D.C. plane crash, and he quit because of pressure from anybody? Elon Musk. The administrator of the FAA, Michael Whitaker, resigned from his position on January 20th after repeated demands from Elon Musk that he quit. It left the agency without a Senate-confirmed leader during a major crisis in the wake of this D.C. plane crash. Musk called for Whitaker's resignation in September after the FAA chief proposed fining Musk's company SpaceX over $600,000 in civil penalties for failing to adhere to license requirements during 2 launches in 2023. Whitaker testified before Congress. He said, quote, "We only have these fines as the only tool to get compliance on safety matters." Well, Musk was so offended by this, and I've made this point over and over on this show, that Musk is now in control of this, that he now is a co-president with Trump, or somewhere in that space. He and his people are able to get into all kinds of things, and he's able to pressure all sorts of governmental leaders. In this case, it's Michael Whitaker, the FAA leader, to quit. And without him there, they can drop these fines against Musk's company. And that's just the beginning of some of the back and forth Musk has had, but it's significant. Now, I have to say one last thing. I feel a little bad for jumping on the politics of it, because I think the politics of it take away from this tragedy in some way. It really, when you see these sweet souls who lost their lives in this accident, it is a terribly disturbing thing to contemplate. And it's also, when you get into the politics of it, taking away from some of the back and forth that's associated with the X's and O's, that is to say, how many people were in the tower. We told you just the one guy handling helicopter and plane. So when you talk about reforming the way things are done on policy, on staffing, this sort of thing, on air traffic and volume of air traffic into DCA, you need to look at these things dispassionately. You need to look at these things independent of politics. And so I feel kind of bad that we have to get into the politics back and forth, but it went right to politics when Trump was at the podium. And so he made allegations that do have to be addressed. And the way in which the agency has been handled, the FAA has been handled, is relevant to this conversation about safety. I remind you of the Boeing relationship with the FAA. Remember, we talked about this with the MAX accident. Remember the 737 MAX? Is that what I believe that's and those 2 planes that went down, and it prompted a conversation and revelations around the way the FAA handles Boeing. They're supposed to regulate, that's a regulatory agency, Boeing and the safety of their planes. Well, Boeing was such a huge economic engine of American aviation that they had taken over, effectively, the FAA. It's called regulatory capture. The regulatory body was captured by, again, this economic engine of Boeing, this massively powerful corporation, so that they were self-policing their own safety. And the revelations came as to what processes were used in building these aircraft, and it's alarming. And that was just the relationship between the FAA and Boeing. And so when you look at the FAA and when you look at government, there is politics involved. But there's also more than red-blue politics. It's money. That's what the Boeing thing was all about. It's just that they have so much money. So now we're into the way these jobs are staffed, and as I've suggested, the way the FAA leader quit because of Musk's harassment and pushback. And that was all because Musk wanted to get out of having to pay the fines, because Musk ignores any rules, any laws, any regulations. And soon, of course, there will be no laws, rules, and regulations for anybody who has the power of Elon Musk. So that's what's happening with the FAA and with the accident. Is it ironic that it occurred at Reagan Airport as Reagan fired the air traffic controllers and sent us down this path of eternal austerity? Thank you, Edgar Campbell, for a $5 super chat. Yeah, for those who don't remember, there was a strike. The air traffic controllers struck, and you as federal employees are not in a position where you can strike. And so Reagan said, either you get back to work or you're all fired. And they didn't get back to work, and he did fire them all. And that did put the agency behind the 8 ball for a long time. I mean, you could argue that they still haven't quite built back. I think I don't have the numbers, so I'm not going to give you any numbers that I just remember, but there's quite a substantial shortfall in terms of the number of air traffic controllers that they get. So Luis says tariffs right in time for the imminent lumber shortage from having to rebuild in L.A. equals awesome. I guess if we annex Canada, we get their lumber for free. Maybe that's the long plan. I mean, it is true. And then you'll lose all of those workers who are in California to try to make a living, and they're not documented legal immigrants, and so you may lose a ton of that workforce. It's already happening in the agricultural fields. Duncan Naylor says, Canadian here, alienating the best ally and partner the U.S. ever had, and for what? Canada will find new allies and partners and be better for it. Tough times ahead, and we'll remember why. Yeah, thank you, Duncan. Again, it makes no sense. Why do you go after your allies? Because it's easy. Trump likes stuff where he puffs himself up and look how I got them to bow to us. I impose tariffs on them. Why? Because I want the stoppage of illegal immigrants, the stoppage of fentanyl. Yeah, but that's not going to help it, man. And you're going to turn the economy on its side. Depressed Canadian with a $10 super chat says, with Trump and the tariffs, it's a shakedown. He's asking for a bribe. He's simply threatening to burn down North America and Denmark if they don't pay up. It's definitely a strong arm. I don't know if it's a bribe, but it is definitely strong arm tactics, and I don't get it. I really don't. And the other thing is, it's all coming at you fast, but his real henchmen are being approved in government. These confirmation, they're deeply disturbing, and they remind you of who these people are. Kash Patel is someone with a true enemies list, a list of political opponents that he will go after. I mean, this is the classic lying that goes on in a confirmation hearing, and then it's really all about the votes and the pressure that the president will put on leadership there, the Senate leadership, to confirm all of these appointments. Rob J says, schoolyard bullying, picking on who he thinks is the weakest. Exactly. So you end up with Colombia, Panama, stronger than Mexico, but I think he's overplayed his hand with Mexico. I think he's overplayed his hand with Canada. He may have overplayed his hand with NATO. So, if you're Trump, you don't care because you're not really in it for any sort of real growth when it comes to America. You're just in it for the power and for its self-enrichment. But what it will do for those who do care is it will drive these nations away from America. So they will become independent of us. It will isolate us, and it will help our adversaries. So if you view China and Russia as our adversaries, it will only help them that America is isolating itself and isolating itself over influence it might have with NATO allies and other allies in the region. So there is absolutely no rational thought behind these decisions. But then again, it is Trump. So, you have to consider it in that context, too.
The Mark Thompson Show.
There is a new North Atlantic Treaty Organization, says the American Day, forming, and America is the only nation not invited. That will suit his dream of autocracy of a small land of bonded workers. I think it is possible, and it's already happening, that European nations stitch together a coalition that it doesn't include America. I think that's absolutely right. So Deborah B says he doesn't care. He likes to push the boundaries of normalcy. Yeah, I get it. And you can push the boundaries of normalcy, but there's real craziness being pushed. Depressed Canadian says Trump talked tough with China and TikTok until he floated the idea of 50% of it as a partnership. It's all transactional. Well, I'd suggest a lot of it's transactional, yes. There are ways to Trump's heart, and they usually go through some kind of transaction that enriches him. Albert, I was really annoyed with myself yesterday because we did Gold Bar Bob as a story, and we did another story, I believe, related to, and we didn't do Law and Disorder.
Oh, no.
Yeah, well, we did. We should have. I did effectively a Law and Disorder segment, but I didn't. And I was really angry at myself. Then I realized it was really your fault, Albert. So I felt better.
Whoever is producing this thing has no idea what they're doing.
And I walked around and thought, God, why didn't you do that, Mark? And then, wait a minute. That's Albert's job to realize.
I blame you.
Or maybe it's my fault. Anyway, the point is, I'd like you to rally for one story. It's really a make good, a little law and disorder. Can you make that happen for me?
I'm ready.
All right. This is Law and Disorder.
In the criminal justice system, the people,
Pimps, addicts, thieves, bums, winos, girls who can't keep an address, and men who don't care.
are represented by two separate yet equally important groups.
A cop, a flatfoot, a bull, a dick, John Law, you're the fuzz, the heat, you're poison, you're trouble, you're bad news.
These are their stories.
Well, the J6ers have enjoyed quite the comeback, haven't they? They stormed the Capitol. They beat cops within an inch of their lives. They bear sprayed. They crapped everywhere. They graffitiized. They took all those fun selfies. And then they went to prison, many of them, in one of the biggest court cases involving more people than, I believe, any other court case in history. And modern history, certainly. And then, of course, the best part is they got pardoned by the incoming president. Well, that's not the end of the story. In a letter sent yesterday to the director of Illinois' Department of Central Management Services, that's the Department of Central Management Services, they staff the state's administrative functions. So they hire people in the administration of Illinois' business. The governor took aim at the J6ers recently pardoned by Donald Trump. This is what the governor wrote. The governor there is J.B. Pritzker. Quote, "No one who attempts to overthrow a government should serve in the government." And Pritzker is walling off his government in Illinois from any hiring of a J6 protester. Having participated in the insurrection should amount to such behavior and be considered as infamous and disgraceful conduct that is antithetical to the mission of the state. I'm committed to building a state workforce that upholds our shared values and delivers results for the people of Illinois, he wrote. Our state workforce must reflect the values of Illinois and demonstrate honesty, integrity, and loyalty to serving the taxpayers. And for Illinois jobs, J6 pardoned rioters are barred. They will not be permitted to
That's
be hired.
pretty bold, because you look around and you see media outlets and politicians that didn't necessarily like Trump capitulating to him, and to have someone stand up and say no, that's a pretty bold move, and I love it.
Oh yeah, I mean it is bold, and you need boldness to fight the boldness that you're seeing on the other side. That's Law and Disorder.
Tune in again next time for more Law and Disorder on the Mark Thompson Show.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Albert, I had planned today to do my orgy of thanks. I don't know if I have time for it now with also Friday Fabulous Florida.
I kept Florida a little short this week, so we can squeeze that in.
All right, cool. I will tell you that speaking of Friday Fabulous Florida, there is a change to Friday Fabulous Florida, and probably many of you won't notice it, but I'll just point it out in case you do look for it. So Friday Fabulous Florida, nothing's changing with it. This is a segment we've been doing since the beginning of the show for years now. We still do it. We focus on kind of funky, weird Florida news, and it can be fun, it can be shocking, it can be all these things. We usually break it out as a separate video since we've come to the YouTube platform, but what's going to happen from now on is we'll still do it, and you'll still be able to watch it, and you'll still be able to watch it forever in the live show, which then appears and sits on YouTube, as you know. You can watch it, in delay. But we're not breaking it out as a separate video anymore. That's all. So you'll find it in the live show. You know where to find it. You can scroll, find it, and watch it. If that's your jam, but don't look for it to be broken out as a separate video. That's all. Now, I promised or mentioned an orgy of thanks to many of you who have found us on PayPal. Patreon and PayPal really sustain us, and many of you have joined our community. We are a crowd-funded show. Yeah, we have small sponsorship agreements with Coachella Valley Coffee, for example, and with Tenuta Vineyard. You know, these are very small little parts of who we are. We really appreciate the fact that a lot of our audience engages with our sponsors, and, you know, we think those are good products, and we're really proud to have them on the show. But the real mother's milk of keeping us alive is Patreon and PayPal. And, of course, those of you who contribute here with the super stickers and super chats. So I always want you to know that. We always scroll everybody's name at the end of a show. But I wanted an orgy of thanks for the PayPalers, who I really, and there's a link to PayPal at the bottom of all our videos, and Patreon for that matter. And was this we like our orgy of thanks music, which is sort of it's very, I'll tell you the truth, it was a debate between this music, and Albert likes this 70s sitcom music. See if I can find it for you. Here it is. This is what Albert really wanted for the orgy of thanks. No. Yeah, this is it. Right. It's a 1970s sitcom, I think. I just feel like, you know, can these two single people live under one roof? You just feel like there should be a freeze frame with, you know, but I don't like it. It's too, anyway. So I'm going with the other, which was with this kind of more of a, anyway, more to the point. Can I just quickly mention our, my orgy of thanks begins with Kathy O. How about it? Thank you for being a part of our PayPal community. Leslie G, $15 a month, ROA. D-E-E. Yeah. Loving all of you who some participate. New York tile makers. Awesome to listen to the MT show while we can, they say. Corla with $5 a month. Enid, OG from the beginning, $5 a month. Patrick and Jennifer, Harvey and Lori. Lori says, Mark, you're the best, counting on you to get us through the next 4 years.
No pressure or anything.
From your favorite Lori, indeed. Thank you. And that's $100. Wow. Miles, same story. Thank you, Miles. Terry and Irene. Irene says, cheers. John says, good job. Irene gave us $200 on PayPal. Wow. Really, really cool. I mean, I don't mean to get into it, but that is just amazing. Then Valerie with $2 and Robert with $25 and William with $35 and Elizabeth and Marilyn and Doyle and Deborah and Larry, and it's just terrific. Nancy and Mark, Gretchen, Jennifer, Irene. Big shout out in the orgy of shout out. I give you all a big hearty hug. Do love that you're part of the show, and without you, I think we go away. Hello from Saratoga's letter carriers, Candace Worthman with a $20 super chat. Big shout out to you. Thank you so much, Nick. The MAGA cult praises him for changing it from the Gulf of brown people to the Gulf of white people from their perspective. Wow. That states it in a really brutal way. Thank you for the super chat. I mean, that Gulf of America thing made no sense. Kathleen Bryant with a $20 super sticker. Thank you, Kathleen. And again, so appreciate you sustaining us on this platform, you know. You guys will, you'll keep me posted on other things we need to respond to from the standpoint of comments, you know, like to not ignore the comments. Albert is with the greatest anticipation that I'm thinking of Florida. But before I do, I want to emphasize, please keep me posted if you hear anything out of the world of Kash Patel. I think the Hegseth thing is deeply disturbing, but now you move to the other deeply disturbing. I think Patel, he maybe had at the top of the list. And I think Vaught, I think that guy who's going to lead the Office of Management and Budget, he is truly dangerous.
Scary.
And he's slipping under the radar.
Mm-hmm.
But Russ Vought is his name, Vought. He is attempting a takeover of government by taking away the power of Congress to fund and putting it on his desk, even programs and administrative aspects of government that have already been approved. So, I mean, freezing all federal grants and loans appropriated by Congress, that's what happened earlier this week. Maybe you don't recall because we had a big plane crash and stuff. But that was Monday night. They froze everything. I mean, cancer research and health research and, everything just immediately frozen. People don't come to work. This guy is reckless. He's aggressively reckless, just like Trump. But he comes out of Project 2025. So Russell Vought is somebody to watch. I think he'll get through, because if you can get Hegseth through, you can get, I think, anybody through. Maybe Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. are taking some political headwinds on in a fairly, it's a fairly tough mission maybe to get them over the finish line. But hey, Hegseth, it was a tough mission to get him over the finish line, and he did it. So I don't know. Anyway, please watch those two. Yeah.
I wonder if there's someone that has access to the national intelligence documents who's looking at them thinking, we don't want Tulsi Gabbard to see this or this or this. So we're going to put them in the lockbox file where no one has access to them. I mean, I hope there's someone safeguarding from these horrible choices.
I mean, that was what happened the first time with Trump. There was that whole article, I believe it was an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal or Washington Post or New York Times saying we're here at the White House and we're protecting America from some of the worst instincts and urges of this president. Those people are gone. So you're right. Maybe the intelligence community, you're right to suggest that there are people there who are different in the intelligence community now, and maybe that organization has people who consider themselves true patriots. But let me say something else about that. That's not cool. I mean, the person who's running the organization, in this case, the Department of National Intelligence, they should have access to everything. I mean, that's the process. The president should have access to everything. I mean, if we have to, build in systems by which we're actually holding out on presidents and those who are running these agencies, that's not good. So I get where that comes from, but it's just not the way we're organized or should be organized. Luis says, props to all the artists and promoters who put on Fire Aid LA last night. The East Bay's very own Green Day opened that 5-hour plus show. Well done, boys. Yeah, Luis, thank you for mentioning that.
Big shout out.
I actually was talking to Kim and Albert about that. I was blown out at how great that was. I didn't even intend to really watch much, but it was terrific. And man, they kept it moving. 2 venues and, I don't know, Joan Jett, and Dr. Dre, and just one right after another. I just did an edible and took the whole thing in, baby. It was a really,
what?
I'm telling you, strong, really, really good. All right, so Albert, are we ready? Have I neglected something I was supposed to do?
Friday Fabulous, Florida.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what you're ready with Friday Fabulous Florida? Hang on a second, Albert. 1 second. Okay. For those who are new, this is a segment we do. It's a little chaser in between politics and some of the news that might be of more concern, but we do love it. This is Friday Fabulous Florida.
It's time for Friday Fabulous Florida.
There is a gigantic alligator in my kitchen.
A look at the weirdest stories from our weirdest state.
A Florida man with an ankle monitor tells deputies that he can't go to jail because he has a curfew. That's right. Love that. Shout out to everybody with a curfew. A Winter Haven man who was on probation, well, he's back behind bars. He interfered with a first responder at the scene of a car crash. There he is, Sebastian Suarez, featured in his mugshot here, which we do rate on a 10 scale. He has a very kind of Roman liege look to him with the haircut and the beard. Very, I could put him right in Gladiator 3. I guess he is something of a gladiator. He's getting 6s and 7s in the chat. 8 from Cheryl. He is a 23-year-old, and he went up to a vehicle crash at Winter Lake Road and Brandy Chase Boulevard and asked, "Yo, what the F happened?" The deputy said that he stopped what he was doing, turned to him, and explained it was a crash, and that everyone appeared to be doing all right. But according to the sheriff, Suarez got within a foot of the deputy and angrily snapped back, "No S, a car crash happened. Who hit who?" The deputy said that he told Suarez to step back so the deputies could do their work. Suarez yelled, "F you can't tell me what to do." The deputy said that he explained to Suarez that he was impeding the deputy's work and that he needed to move back or be arrested. That's when Suarez uncorked the get-out-of-jail-free card. "You can't arrest me. I'm on an ankle monitor with a curfew. You can't do S. You can't take me anywhere."
It's really nice that he takes that curfew seriously.
I mean, you got to throw
it's
something.
a wild idea, but it just might work.
In this case, he was arrested and charged with violation of probation, which was a willful child abuse. He sounds like he's not the...
Sebastian.
Yeah, he sounds like a bad dude. Interfering with the first responder, 2 counts of resisting arrest, and he went to jail.
Good day, sir.
There you go. Meantime, on the other side of town, a man in a Dalmatian onesie facing 13 charges after fleeing troopers while still having one handcuff on.
Tell me there's a picture.
Albert, I don't know that there is. He will be held in his own cage with his Dalmatian onesie on. And there he is. Love
good.
it. Looking good. He is charged with fleeing to elude, escaping, reckless driving. He ran away with one handcuff on, according to the Florida Highway Patrol. After fleeing troopers in his vehicle, he was ultimately stopped. It happened just after midnight. After the troopers activated their lights and sirens on their patrol car, the 36-year-old Dylan Keith Devereaux took off. According to Highway Patrol, Devereaux even dropped off a passenger, made a U-turn, and continued to flee. Devereaux took off on foot after he crashed into a tree, and then he was ultimately tased by a trooper. As he was being placed in handcuffs, the suspect began fighting the trooper on the road and was subsequently tased again. Devereaux pushed the trooper, began to run toward his home. He only had one handcuff on, then he disappeared into a nearby woodland. Another trooper with his canine arrived at the scene, sweeping the backyard of the home and the wooded area looking for him.
What can you tell us about the scene?
We're looking for him in a wooded area, Larry.
What can you tell us about the scene?
Inside the Newport Richie home, Devereaux's girlfriend, 31-year-old Megan Elizabeth Hamilton, told officials she did not want them in her home because she had drugs inside and didn't want to go to jail. Hamilton also said that Devereaux was not inside. Devereaux was arrested, wearing a lanyard with a pouch containing an unknown white pill substance and meth. He told troopers that he got rid of the handcuffs somewhere when he was running between houses. Devereaux has a lot of explaining to do, Kim, and he is in jail as we speak.
Good day, sir.
Yeah. And finally, a Florida woman who denied throwing a brick through her ex's window is caught on camera, Kim.
Nice.
She is captured on video throwing a brick through her ex-husband's home in Bonita Spring, Florida. There she is. I'm going to say Sabrina Coyne has kind of a come hither look in her.
Don't mess with Sabrina.
Apparently not. She denies that she threw the object in the incident, but the video showed that she did. Her ex-husband contacted the cops after seeing his living room window smashed and her standing outside the home admiring her work. And here it is, the video. You can see her. She's videoing her. She throws the brick through the window. She looks like she's videoing her own work. She picks up a brick, throws it at the window, which is followed by a breaking noise. Then she appears to take a photo with her cell phone, they note, as she walks off the property. Later, she told a responding deputy at the scene that she didn't do it. He was asked, "Did you launch anything in there?" She said, "No." Deputies at the scene, though, presented...
What can you tell us about the scene?
They presented the video to Coyne, Larry, and she has been booked.
It's almost like she was prepared for this mugshot. Made sure she had a full face of makeup. You know, she's just ready to go.
She looks good.
Yeah.
Gotta say, she looks good. And she,
I'd be willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol involved.
That may be. But all I'm trying to say is, if you're looking for an attractive brick tosser, then she is indeed maybe the one you want. Albert?
Some guys like the crazy ladies. So,
yeah, it's true. Crazy is
She's got
crazy usually
News,
hot on some
Fox
level.
News host or like White House press secretary look to her.
She does. You're
have
absolutely
that.
right. Yeah, she does it. She could be. Albert, we have to wrap quickly, but I did want to ask, we don't like to pick a favorite, but of these three, which one leads in the chat?
The Dalmatian onesie guy. I think it was. I kind of agree with the chat because he just went on this wild adventure. But last thing I have to say about it, 36 seems a little too old to be wearing a Dalmatian onesie. He can't be wearing those type of things.
It's borderline. You're right. It is definitely borderline. Kim, did you have a favorite? Was that
How
it?
old is too old to wear a onesie? I'm going Dalmatian onesie all the way with the
Dalmatian
dangling handcuff
onesie.
as a cherry on this Sunday. Beautiful.
The crowd favorite is Dalmatian onesie, and that is Friday Fabulous Florida.
This has been Friday Fabulous Florida.
There is a gigantic alligator in my kitchen.
Y'all come back now here.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Thank you for being here. This is Friday of a week that has been so very eventful, and I'm looking forward to this next person joining, even as I have to slide out. I will be listening because I truly am curious as to how Michael somehow settles everything that we've dealt with, from, the government freeze that happened on Monday night to the plane crash that turned into a blame game on the part of Trump, talking about Obama and Biden and DEI, to the Patel and Gabbard and RFK Jr. confirmation hearings. There's a lot to talk about. So, Kim, I turn it over to you, and I'm so excited to listen to what Michael has to say. Thank you.
What do we say? Yeah. We say he's forgotten more about politics than we'll ever know. What do we say?
Than most of us will ever know, yes.
Okay, most of, yeah. All right.
Yeah. I always, so I feel like if we're going to break this out as a video, I just want you to do it without me spoiling it. But Michael, I'm going to have Kim actually introduce you. You understand?
Well, can I just speak to my mic here? Can you hear me on this new mic?
You sound great.
Good.
That's a great mic.
Yeah. So, right. Every mic becomes a Shure microphone, obviously.
That is true.
But I'm pleased.
We got Michael his own microphone, which we're very happy we could get you.
I can't drink coffee out of it, I'll point out. But.
What?
All right, Michael. With love, I'll let Kim re-intro you, and I will. I'll take off for the day, but I'm excited. And Kim, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
All right.
Happy KFIing.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It is the Mark Thompson Show. We just cut Mark Thompson loose, and now we bring in Michael Shure. He has forgotten more about politics than most of us will ever know. And I love him. Michael Shure, welcome to the show.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I like the intro. Good to be here with you, Kim, and even without Mark. You know, we've done this now for weeks, right?
We don't need that guy.
We don't need that guy,
He's
obviously.
out.
But how's the mic sound? I mean, is this?
Sounds really good. I like it a lot.
Good. I think we've graduated to real mics. So
yeah, it sounds great. So I'm reading this analysis on Politico about if Trump decides he wants a third term, because we keep hearing him crack these jokes, you know, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, if I had a third term kind of thing. And so Politico does this analysis about the paths that he could actually take to make this happen. They say he could generate a movement to repeal the 22nd Amendment. He could exploit a little notice loophole in the amendment that might allow him to run for vice president and then immediately ascend back to the presidency. He could run for the president again on the bet that the Supreme Court wouldn't really stop him because they're all in his pocket. Or he could just refuse to leave, which they say would put a formal end to America's democratic experiment. It's all hearsay, but he's the one that's really starting the hearsay by making these comments, a flurry of them, that he's not checking out. Is this realistic even?
Well, I mean, it's realistic in that, you know, it's something that we're talking about, and because of him, I mean, it's important that we're talking about it 4 years ahead of time. I honestly think that all of those are ridden with impossibility too, which is encouraging. A constitutional amendment would require so many Democrats that's virtually off the table, right? And to get the states, there are enough Democratic state legislatures where that wouldn't happen either. So we can get away from it constitutionally, which is where it would be kind of most able to become law. And then if you go to someone running for president, Trump being that person's vice president, which is a little loopholey, when you talk about that as a loophole, it also presupposes that Vance could win the presidency. And if Vance were to win the presidency and resign, it would presuppose that he would abide by the resignation too. So there's a lot that goes into that. I don't see that as the way that Trump, that anybody would want to run for president, by having his vice president sort of steal some thunder, and that's what would happen if Vance were to run. So I think that is where you kind of run into the problems. Now, as far as not leaving, well, yeah, then you have a crisis that supersedes anything constitutional, and it's an entirely different conversation. And then I would guess that you would have a more bipartisan opposition to that, which is, you know, even with the people that we see as kind of wacko legislators in terms of the way they kowtow to this guy, I think that there's some that would fall away from the Republican norms that we've come to know now, and would oppose any kind of inability to leave. If somebody else rightfully won an election, there's also a way to forcibly get the occupant of the White House to leave should he not leave.
It scares me, though, because I'm kind of just counting the days until this is over. So to have someone say there's a possibility it could be extended, it's hard, because as an American, you don't really want to believe that's possible. Oh, that's ridiculous.
Right.
Our rules state that's not the way. But we've seen that he somehow magically manages to get around rules, manages not to face consequences for anything.
Yeah.
So at this point, to me, I feel like we have to say everything's a possibility with this guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true, that everything's a possibility, but there's some things that are constitutionally impossible. And if he were to leave, if he were to refuse to leave, that again has nothing to do with the Constitution, but it could certainly, it could invoke other parts of our laws that require him to leave, and would require him to leave, which would entail having the military force him out, having a National Guard force him out, having actual law enforcement, because he would be in violation of U.S. law at that point. Those were things that were entertained when he was challenging the 2020 election and saying that he didn't lose, that some people were saying he was just going to stay, wouldn't leave.
Yeah. One of the things Trump has indicated is that, hey, we only have 15 detainees at Guantanamo Bay. Maybe that is a facility that could be used to house migrants that are here, undocumented migrants that are here illegally. We're going to put migrants at Guantanamo?
There's been during the run up to this, to Homan becoming Homeland Security and dealing with all of this, I think a lot of people were thinking, okay, this is going to lead to internment camps. Well, America doesn't want to go back to what the forced internment of Japanese here, and what happened there. But Guantanamo or other facilities similar, and again, Guantanamo, because we have it, is what they're talking about, and because it's not in the United States, it's what they're talking about. Keeping the bad people out. Where do Americans sort of reflexively, or people who are law and order, quote unquote, Americans reflexively want to put? Well, we have Guantanamo. Send them to Guantanamo. These are not the kind of criminals. You don't put people who cross the border illegally next to people who tried to bomb and destroy the United States, if in fact that's who is remaining there.
You make entirely too much sense. Confirmation hearings are underway, and there's some real doozies happening right now. As a matter of fact, I think that Kash Patel is on the hot seat. And so I think we've got some video Albert was going to put up for us of Kash Patel's confirmation hearings. But Tulsi Gabbard is on the hot seat as well, RFK Jr. So there's some big votes coming down the pike. What do we have?
There are, and reading tea leaves, it's really difficult to tell anything about who or will vote against these people. We saw Collins, Murkowski, and McConnell vote against Pete Hegseth for defense, but that wasn't enough because Vice President Vance cast the tie-breaking vote. My guess is that one person won't be confirmed, and I don't know that means that there's going to be a groundswell against them and they will withdraw, or they will get to a floor vote and be defeated. But I wouldn't bet a lot on what I just said either. There is still a 53-47. You have to not only lose Republican votes, you have to lose 4 Republican votes, but you also have to keep all the Democratic votes. And there are some Democrats who are going to vote for some of these people. And so I'm not sure that the 53-47 will matter in terms of a split as much with these. In descending order of difficulty, I would say that the most difficult is Kennedy because he's a Democrat. And then Patel, and then Gabbard. And even though Gabbard was a Democrat, I don't see her at DNI being as problematic, though, that she faced tough questioning from some Republicans yesterday. And there are some Democrats who were kind of kind to Kennedy. So it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out. John Fetterman is a senator to watch on the Democratic side. I would say on the Republican side, I would keep your eyes on Bill Cassidy when it comes to Kennedy, Mitch McConnell across the board, Collins and Murkowski across the board, and perhaps even Deb Fischer, but I wouldn't bank on that.
You mentioned Cassidy, and I was reading this piece about how he's this one vote that really isn't guaranteed a Republican vote for RFK Jr. He was a gastroenterologist before he got into politics. He has life-saving experiences with vaccines, and he gave Kennedy every chance to renounce the things that he has said about vaccines being linked to all kinds of diseases that they're not linked to. And Kennedy wouldn't do what he wanted him to do. So it could be that Cassidy is the one that steps aside and says, I can't vote for RFK Jr.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So here's the thing with these, and in kind of descending order again, and I think that's the whole point with Cassidy, and that's what makes it make what you just said makes sense, and Cassidy's background in medicine. But then you go down the aisle, and Roger Marshall's was in medicine. Rand Paul was kind of in medicine. There are people that differ even under that umbrella, but and I should say, I guess Rand Paul was in medicine. He was an ophthalmologist, so that's medicine. What you have to look at is there's a stat in baseball called wins above replacement. So how the team does when your sub is in there versus when you're in there, essentially. And that's kind of what you have to look at with these nominees. And so the one thing is that if Robert Kennedy is voted down, or if Kash Patel are voted down, if either of the two of them are voted down, the person who comes in is going to be largely different. They're going to be of the same mold and conservatism when it comes to Patel, and probably a little bit more suspect of the way the COVID vaccine was handled, et cetera, when it comes to Kennedy. I think Gabbard would be replaced by a Gabbard who will have some problems and not. So Democrats have to figure out which person would change the department the most were they to come in, and how important is that. And so I think when it comes to Kennedy and when it comes to Patel, you're going to get people who, should they not be confirmed, are going to be very different than the two of them. And that's why a Democrat voting against them, or even a Republican, like a Republican could vote, Bill Cassidy could vote against Kennedy and still know that he's going to get an HHS secretary with whom he agrees on most of the things, right? It's not a ceremonial thing. With Kash Patel, he comes in with an enemies list and seemingly comes in with an agenda. And that might not be the case with whoever is the replacement nominee. But again, I think you get one at most of these people not confirmed.
Let's take a look at this video, because apparently Kash Patel is having a bit of an issue with lying to the panel.
Stu Peters, does that name ring a bell?
I'm sorry, what is it?
Are you familiar with Mr. Stu Peters?
Not off the top of my head.
He made 8 separate appearances on his podcast. He promoted outrageous conspiracy theories and worked with a prominent neo-Nazi.
That was an amazing moment from.
Yeah, he's just not answering the questions. He's not forthcoming at all, and it's rather combative.
Yeah, it is combative. These things get combative. He is less deferential than most nominees to any department are to the Senate committee members. And look, a lot of it is a show, right? I mean, if this were to happen as it did before C-SPAN in 1976, when Jimmy Carter named his cabinet, you didn't see any of these hearings. You read about them, you heard reports about them, but you didn't see the show that goes on. Right. But Patel, and I've watched a sickening number of these confirmation hearings over the years, and I like it. I mean, I find it interesting. I find it enlightening. You learn about the senators. You learn, it's cool political theater, but that's what it is. And Patel is out of the mold because he is not the type of person. I mean, he's very combative and seemed to be very combative, almost arrogant in front of the committee. I don't think they like that, but I don't think that determines a vote either. I think the question is, the president gets a great deal of deference from his own party, whoever the president is, in being able to name his own cabinet.
One of the nominees that already has been confirmed is not one that we really focused on as far as, talking about it, looking at what was said. At least I didn't. That was the Secretary of the Interior now, for Doug Burgum.
Yeah.
And, he's someone who was an oil industry enthusiast, and now he's the Secretary of the Interior. I don't know what's going to happen. I guess no matter what, it was going to be someone in there that's going to advocate Trump's policy. So does it really matter who?
It doesn't. And those that look, I mean, on both sides, these are the types of people you get, right? I mean, Doug Burgum's a billionaire. Doug Burgum is a big sky governor. He's someone who ran for president, then endorsed Trump. And that makes perfect political sense. Is it our fantasy Secretary of the Interior? No, Donald Trump will never nominate our fantasy Secretary of the Interior, but he's a seemingly smart guy, and he fits the mold of who you think would be the Secretary of Interior under Donald Trump. I mean, last time the first one I think was Ryan Zinke, who was from Montana. I mean, this is what you get. I mean, when they say elections have consequences, it's a very dismissive way of saying something, but the consequence here is that you get an Interior Secretary who will be far more conservative than you'd want.
In addition to all of the confirmation hearings going on, we had this week brought us two, I don't know if you want to call them faux pas or flubs by the Trump administration. One was the federal funding thing, which a judge had to step in and go, yeah, no, can't do that. We're going to put a stop to it. And the other is the Elon Musk letter that went out to all federal workers that said, take an 8-month buyout or take your chances and roll the dice to see whether you still have a job. I understand there is some scuttlebutt that perhaps Musk went around the Trump administration and kind of did that solo. And so I don't know how that makes Trump look or whether he's really in charge of what's happening as far as people around him taking off and doing these things. I don't know.
Yeah, well, whether or not he went around the administration, there are certain people in the administration who don't like his presence. And for them to sort of float a balloon that Musk went around the administration is, I think, the beginning of the narrative, if you will. I'm tired of that word, but I just said it. That Trump and Musk will not be long for the world together in terms of administering policy. Musk comes at this as the richest man in the world, which makes politicians' ears perk up. I had dinner last night with a member of Congress here in California, and he said to me that he knows that colleagues of his who are terrified to go against some of the initiatives that Musk is saying, not against Trump, not against it, but initiatives that Musk is putting in because he's wanting to fund primaries for people who go against the things he says. I don't think that dynamic will last long. Look, Donald Trump likes loyalty, but he breaks up with people a lot. And I think that this is going to be fractured soon enough. As for the budget stuff, I mean, Russell Vought, who is the OMB nominee, Office of Management and Budget nominee, who is one of the architects of Project 2025, is under a lot of heat for that. They're saying it was that he messed up right out of the gate. And Democrats are not even letting that vote come to the floor. And so it is a very, very difficult situation for an administration to come in and mess up that badly in the first week with this, and it could cost Vought his position. I'm not sure yet if that will happen or not.
Does it offer us some hope if Democrats are really unable to keep votes from coming to the floor, that maybe there's a way to at least slow them down?
Yes, I mean there are things that you can do from the filibuster on in the Senate to delay, but what should frustrate Democrats more is that there is such a divide in the Senate now. We haven't had one like this in a while. It's not even, I mean, there have been much bigger in both of our lives, much bigger gaps in the Senate than there are now by party. But this is the biggest we've had in a little while because we've had such an even Senate. So it's 53-47, and reasonableness isn't there in many circles because some of these people, so many of them are devoted to Trump in the way that they are. I think that's the real sticking point. So I'm not going to paint a rosy picture here. The Democrats have to do whatever they can to delay until 2026 until they can win the House back and make sure that what they're saying is articulated publicly. And I think messaging is going to be the big difference now. So, there are devices and there are tactics, but you can only delay for so long.
Tomorrow, Trump says that the tariffs are coming for Canada and Mexico, 25% tariffs, he says. And he said, listen, they don't really have products we need anyway. And also, he's upset about the flow of migrants at the southern border. He's upset about fentanyl. And so he's shaking up the neighborhood, going to slap down 25% tariffs on both of our neighbors. And Trudeau from Canada came out today and said, if he does this, we will respond accordingly. And that's the way it is. How is this all going to play out, Michael
Well,
Shure?
we don't know because the White House has given us no details about how the levies are going to happen. I mean, so we don't know what it's going to mean, but the Dow went down, the markets are responding to it. And his White House is, just falling back on promises made, promises kept, right? That he's going to do these tariffs. But, tariffs also generally come with exemptions. And I don't know if the White House is going to have exclusions. We know nothing about the details of this, and if you combine those three countries, I think it's over $1.5 trillion worth of business per year that they do with these three companies, and I can't believe that these tariffs are not going to have a negative effect, and so I think it's especially concerning. But like a lot of what Trump does, he does one panel of a wall. So maybe he'll impose the tariffs on February 1st on Saturday, and then a few days later or a little while, it's like posturing, and then he'll come down. I don't know, but I mean, if Trump invites inflation, that is not something he wants on his legacy, and a lot of economists say that will bring, I'm not an economist, but a lot of economists say that that's going to invite in inflation, and the Commerce Department is it's watching those numbers.
There's a statement made by Marco Rubio on Greenland that this is no joke, that we really are going after Greenland. And it's such an outrageous thing to think that we could just go buy Greenland, or if they don't want to sell it, take it over militarily, that it's kind of laughable. But the Trump administration seems to mean business on Greenland. What do you think that this is something we're going to see happen?
No, I mean, it's a little bit of promises kept, promises made, promises kept.
Sure.
Rubio, I don't think. I think this is going to be one of those things that are like, an early priority that gets kind of lost in the mud. I mean, I think Rubio is doing the work. Look, he was confirmed 99-0, and he's doing the work that the president wants done. And I don't think it's going to get anywhere. I think they can say we tried. Is really what it comes down to.
Lastly, I wanted to give you an opportunity because I like it. I know a lot of people are interested when you come on the show. They want to see Michael Shure's 48 seconds of sports. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to slap it down.
Wow. Well, I'm that's a co-hosted segment, co-branded and co-hosted by Albert. So I don't.
Albert's got to come in. Yeah.
But yeah, we got to bring Albert in for this. But I think the lead sports news going has to do with the playoffs and football. Neither of us have a team here. Albert's not here. 48 seconds of sports and he's gone. So I'm going to talk about today how I'm going to build up hockey because I only have a few seconds left. Hockey, the salary cap is rising. The league is at its most flush. More people are going. More people are buying the swag. More teams are making money. And eventually, before I leave this great earth, hockey will pass the NBA in sports popularity. That's my little goal.
I'm just rooting for Taylor Swift's boyfriend. That's all.
All right. Oh yeah. Well, that's what a lot of people are doing, and that's just fine. Look, I don't have animosity toward the Chiefs. A lot of I couldn't stand the Patriots. A lot of these sort of cocky winning teams people don't like. For some reason, the Chiefs haven't bothered me in that same way, but I get why people are upset with them. I don't like Philly sports fans, so my feeling is that I'm rooting against Philly sports fans. But if they win, and my day will not be changed. The 49ers are going to win next year, so it doesn't matter.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you if there are any political stories that you're following that I didn't ask you about, because I love the work that you do. And I know you always have your fingers in a bunch of different pies politically. What are the upcoming stories that you see that will be upon us in the coming days?
In terms of a story, there isn't a particular story. There's a dynamic that I'm watching, and I'm watching the way leadership in both the House and the Senate are operating. So I'm watching to see what Hakeem Jeffries is doing, both to accommodate Mike Johnson, the speaker, but also where he's pushing back on him. What little things he's doing that are going to try and win back voters in an enduring way. I've noticed him, and he's not someone who wears God on his sleeve, but I've noticed him kind of invoking God in very casual ways, not in didactic ways. But and that to me tells me that he's reaching out to a different segment, and he wants his caucus to reach out to a segment that they feel that they've lost. And then on the Senate side, I'm wanting to see how John Thune, as the new majority leader in the Senate, is able to both balance the power of the Senate, which he loves and sort of institutionalist senators do love, against the White House and against particularly a Trump White House, having to defend. I mean, he's somebody who is a pretty straightforward conservative, pretty religious, but kind of, I would say, establishment Republican politician. And he now has to engage with someone who is definitely not his type of person. And those interactions are super important for the way legislation comes to the floor. I don't think you can look at confirmation hearings because they're kind of irregular when it comes to what the Senate does in general. It's one of their tasks, but it does very little to do with the way they legislate. So they're going to be clashes, and I think finding out where those are going to be early on is a fascinating thing to watch more than it's a story.
Oh, I'm going to be asking you about this question next week. Michael Shure, thank you. Have a great weekend. Thanks for being on the Mark Thompson Show.
Bye, guys.
And we look forward to next Friday.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Me too. Bye-bye.
Michael Shure, everybody. Love it. Let's do a little bit of
The Mark Thompson Show.
Let's do a little bit of news, and then we will get to the Culture Blaster, looking at the best movies, the best streaming options for the weekend ahead. But first, the news. On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. Look at that. No one next to me to interrupt the news. It's a beautiful day on the Mark Thompson Show. This report sponsored by Tenuta Vineyards in Livermore. There are recovery efforts underway again today after that plane crash near Washington, D.C. earlier this week. Dozens of bodies have been pulled from the Potomac River. American Airlines that had the jet involved in the crash, it was carrying 64 people, while 3 soldiers were on the Army Black Hawk helicopter that collided with it. NTSB investigators said the 2 black box data recorders have been recovered from that plane. The FAA, meanwhile, is restricting helicopter flights near Reagan National Airport indefinitely. The restrictions come following this accident. The 2 helicopter routes in the area have been closed, including the one that was used by that Black Hawk. The agency will only let medical and police helicopters fly into this zone between Reagan National and nearby bridges. A federal appeals court is eliminating a federal ban preventing handguns from being sold to those between the ages of 18 and 20. The ban has been in place since 1968, but the decision yesterday by the Fifth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals cited a 2022 Supreme Court opinion that expanded gun rights. So, the ban eliminated. President Trump says 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico are coming on Saturday. but he hasn't decided whether oil imports will be included in this. Speaking at the White House yesterday, Trump said it would depend on the price of oil. President says we don't need the products Mexico and Canada have, and we have all the oil we need. Canada supplied half of oil imports into America in 2023, while Mexico made up 11%. The president also meeting with the CEO of chipmaker NVIDIA. This as the White House is reportedly considering pulling back on chip exports to China. The meeting with CEO Jensen Huang comes as the United States and China really amp up their competition over AI development, with that Chinese startup DeepSeek we've heard of in recent days surging in popularity. NVIDIA's stock price dropped nearly 17% by the market close on Monday as DeepSeek sealed its #1 spot for free apps on the Apple App Store. President Trump will attend a roundtable for National School Choice Week today. This comes after he signed an executive order to give more support to school choice programs. A White House official said the president wants parents throughout the nation to be empowered to direct their children's education. School choice apparently, or obviously, referring to using public education funds to allow families to access alternative options other than public schooling in their area. That can include homeschooling, it can include online schooling, top of public charter, private, magnet, or parochial schools as well. So taking the public school funding away and giving it to other schools. 4 more people are facing charges in connection with that deadly New Year's Day fireworks explosion that happened in Hawaii. The Honolulu Police Department confirming 2 sets of parents were arrested on Wednesday. This takes the total number of arrests to 6 in that case. Authorities say more arrests and more charges are coming. Police are also planning to partner with federal law enforcement to identify the source of those illegal fireworks that exploded, killing 5 people and wounding dozens of others. Speaking of that plane crash earlier, a Bay Area airport is set to see its air traffic control tower go dark this weekend. The San Carlos Airport Tower will not be staffed starting on Saturday. Airport officials say its air traffic control team all resigned after a contract dispute over pay with the private company that employs them. The idea of not having any air traffic controllers working this area is alarming people, especially given that accident in Washington, D.C. Meta says it will fire employees who leak internal data to the media. That according to a leaked memo from the company, which comes after CEO Mark Zuckerberg complained in a company-wide meeting yesterday about everything he says getting leaked to the press. In the memo, Meta's chief security officer says leaks will be taken seriously and action will be taken. Netflix is greenlighting a Little House on the Prairie reboot. Wasn't the first one enough? The series will be based on the classic novels by Laura Ingalls Wilder, the books originally adapted into a hit TV series that aired for 9 seasons from 1974 to 1983. No word on when the new Little House on the Prairie will debut. And Google is launching an experimental AI feature that can handle phone calls on your behalf. Don't feel like making that phone call? That's okay. Just tell Google to do it. Ask for Me, it's called, can contact a local business, gather pricing or availability information for services. The feature then sends a summary to you via email or text about all the information
That's
you
real.
need. Hey, this is 2025. We do all these things now. This report is sponsored by Tenuta Winery. You say smash it with your iron rod at Tenuta, you get a 10% discount immediately. 20% off of a case. All you have to do is call Rich at 925-699-4576, or you can email him, rich@tenutavineyard.com, and type or say, smash it with your iron rod.
With your iron rod.
Thank you. You get your exclusive Mark Thompson Show discount. And let me tell you, Tenuta Winery has 29 tasting choices in the tasting room. 29. That is a lot. 12 whites, 17 reds. Some of them include, of course, the Mark Thompson Why Are You Yelling Red? The Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson Pinot Grigio? They also have Pinot, Primitivo, Cabernet, Malbec, Cab Franc, Carignan, Mourvedre, Petit Syrah, a Zin. They have red blends, 4 red ports. They have a Syrah port, a Primitivo, a Zin, and a Grenache port. And they have planted new vineyards. And I'm not sure if these wines are ready yet, but they will be soon. Tempranillo, Barbera, Sangiovese, and Grenache. So they have a lot going on out at the vineyard. Please check it out. It is Tenuta Vineyards in Livermore. And again, you get your exclusive discount. You can check it out at, again, 925-699-4576 if you want to make reservations for a taste, or you can email Rich at tenutavineyard.com. The email is Tenuta Vineyard. The website is Tenuta Winery, and you can take a look at the winery website and look at their options for things that you might be considering ordering, and then make the call and get your discount. I'm Kim McAllister, and this is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
Pop through. Oh, first of all, Luis, I'm so sorry I didn't put this one up on the screen so Michael can see it. Michael, you have no mug because of DEI. Love your favorite president. Yeah, we got to get Michael a mug. That is the truth. And thank you for the contribution, Luis. Luis, and also Nicholas writing, would you like Britain's Kingsman showing up to save us all? In all seriousness, very proud to call myself a Californian, given Gavin Newsom's fearlessness. Nicholas, thank you so much for the contribution and for your comment. We appreciate it. And we've got a $10 super sticker from DC Tarot Dreams. So thank you for the support. The show is crowdfunded. You can always super chat or super sticker us, or you can check out our Patreon, PayPal links at themarkthompsonshow.com. Easy click-throughs and easy ways to support this show. D. Elliott wants to know, can someone tell me where the money is coming from to buy Greenland? As you can tell, I'm behind. Yeah, I think we all are behind. Thank you for that, the comment. Let's move forward and go to the movies. He comes and he goes on a rainbow. There it is. Culture Blaster, Michael Snyder, everybody. Hi.
Hey, hi, Kim. Gong Hei Fat Choi, everybody. Happy Chinese New Year. I'm not sure if I will attend the Chinese New Year parade in San Francisco or Los Angeles, but I promise I will try to soft pedal any Year of the Snake references to that snake pit, Washington, D.C., where it's been the Year of the Snake since January 20th. My big question is, can snakes also be pigs or baboons? Because it certainly seems like it in D.C.
What is your Chinese astrological sign? Do you know?
I think I'm a tiger. I just feel very much like I have the eye of the tiger, or I have the eyes of the tiger. And of course, I cast them towards movies, TV, concerts, and what have you. You know, we got to keep on rolling. And shall we talk about new films? There aren't a lot of them, but I was pretty impressed with one of them for sure. Shall we go?
Let's do it.
Okay. Smart and funny and creepy and exciting Companion is a totally cool sci-fi fueled horror tinged thriller with more than a few comedic moments and some criminal activity. There's a little bit of a crime drama going on here too. The premise is deceptively familiar. Nice guy type Josh, played by Jack Quaid, and his seemingly perfect and loving girlfriend Iris, played by Sophie Thatcher, joined three of Josh's friends for a weekend getaway at a remote house belonging to a boorish but nouveau riche Russian guy. But Iris is very uneasy about the gathering. What could possibly go wrong? I can't even imagine. Anyway, in short order, the true nature of things begins to be revealed, and then the situation gets even crazier. The push and pull and the backstory of the Josh-Iris coupling, given dimension by Quaid and Thatcher, set it apart from previous movies that may have served as influences. You know, I don't want to spoil anything, but I think that the posters and the trailers do a pretty good job of that. I will just say that if you're familiar with and liked Ex Machina and Lars and the Real Doll, Companion is for you. Jack Quaid is, as noted in previous blasts on the MTS, Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan's son. Yeah, a bit of a nepo baby, but he's good, and his filmography ranges from the rom-com Plus One to the animated TV show Star Trek Lower Decks to the prestige movie Oppenheimer, and to the upcoming action comedy Novocaine. He's got 2 movies in close proximity. And if Novocaine is as good as Companion, he'll be 2 for 2 in 2025. Thatcher is a rising young actress whose impressive turn as an imperiled teenage Mormon missionary in Heretic is exceeded here by her multifaceted portrayal of Iris. Familiar faces in the supporting cast include Harvey Guillen of TV's What We Do in the Shadows as one of Josh's friends, Megan Suri as a sarcastic woman in the group who is sleeping with the Russian and seems to have issues with Iris, and Rupert Friend as that mysterious Russian. The screenwriter and director of Companion, Drew Hancock, nailed and expertly melded the different elements of the film, including its satirical punch regarding the power dynamics and romantic relationships that are on the brink. For the most part, Hancock previously worked in TV as a writer, but Companion comes off as the product of a veteran filmmaker. It starts really sly, it shifts to sinister, and it ends up a full-on rager. And all the while, it cooks while looking as good as movies with much bigger budgets. To be fair, a lot of it is set in this upscale house in a beautiful remote area by a lake, so there aren't a lot of locations, but Companion doesn't need anything beyond that to deliver its twists and turns and shockers. I know it's a low bar, but Companion is my favorite American movie of the year to date. I know. It's the January doldrums. With its tongue-in-cheek take on the perils of love and sex in the tech age, it's also the perfect pre-Valentine's Day antidote to that Hallmark holiday's relentless sweetness and light. Companion is in theaters.
So you're recommending Companion?
I am. It's quite good. I think some of the people responsible for that very, very smart horror film, Barbarian, are in production positions for Companion. I thought it was damn good.
Awesome.
Okay, let's move.
Okay.
Let's move on. Should we move on?
Let's do it.
I believe that the rom-com You're Cordially Invited is the first team up of Will Ferrell and Reese Witherspoon, whose specific comedic skills, I mean, he's usually loud and loony, and she's usually tightly wound and snarky. They may seem at odds, yet they mesh pretty well here. The situation is that through a booking error, 2 weddings are scheduled for the same day on a Georgia island resort that can only accommodate 1 wedding at a time. So Farrell is the single father of one bride. Witherspoon is the bachelorette sister of the other bride. And when both wedding parties arrive at the venue, conflict and a few bursts of hilarity ensue. I mean, there's a lot of verbal vulgarity, which might account for the R rating, but it's generally good-natured and with some pretty talented comic actors and some laugh-out-loud lines and bits. In short, I know this damning with faint praise has to stop. It's better than I expected. On the other hand, no, it doesn't quite hit the standards of previous efforts from comedy screenwriter-director Nicholas Stoller, who wrote and directed this. He's the guy who directed Neighbors and Forgetting Sarah Marshall, both of which I thought were really funny and really good. He wrote the recent Muppet movies, The Muppets and Muppets Most Wanted, and wrote and directed the funny gay rom-com Bros. This isn't quite up to that. In addition to Farrell, whose character is kind of a homebody Mr. Mom type, and Witherspoon, whose character is an LA-based reality TV producer, the supporting cast features the rather amusing Geraldine Viswanathan from Bad Education and Blockers and Drive Away Dolls, playing Farrell's daughter, and the somewhat amusing Meredith Hagner from Palm Springs and Vacation Friends as Witherspoon's sister, and Jack McBrayer, good old Jack McBrayer from 30 Rock, as the manager of the double-booked wedding venue. So for the first 2/3 of You're Cordially Invited, I was pleasantly surprised. I laughed. Farrell and Witherspoon have decent antagonistic chemistry. It was clever and kind of antic, and then it jumped the shark. No, sorry. It jumped the gator. See that poster, and you'll know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And from that point on, I just was not as on board as before. As far as the soundtrack, there are some obvious needle drops, as you would expect for a movie about weddings. But as my guest at the screening said, there is no reason for the repeated use of one rather famous song after it serves a very effective gag in the middle of the movie. Nonetheless, it's repeated twice more. I mean, she was beside herself on the third version of the song. Anyway, should you RSVP to You're Cordially Invited? Well, it's only available on Amazon Prime TV. So if you have a subscription, you could do worse than giving it 20 minutes to see if it tickles you. It's no classic, but I chuckled now and then.
So kind of recommended, but not wholeheartedly.
No, tentative at best. It has its moments. It does. And again, for the first 2/3 of it, I think they really have something going. And then it's anything for a laugh, and that doesn't always work.
I have to say, I wouldn't have put Reese Witherspoon and Will Ferrell together. Like, I don't see them as a couple.
Yeah, that may end up being an issue for you during the last 10 minutes of the movie. But I will say, oh my God, oh, spoiler alert. I will say, honestly, they mesh pretty well despite their disparate approaches to comedy. You know, she's done some rom-com stuff in the past, and she's very much at home with that sort of thing. And again, you would think oil and water stylistically, but it works for a while. Okay, let's wrap up the new movie segment with Dog Man. Now,
you know what?
Man,
no matter what you say, I'm going to have to see this movie. Like, there's I'm going to get dragged.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Dog Man is, we'll call it the idiosyncratic animated feature film based on a very popular and what seems to be a cheerfully wacky book series that I have not read. Although my friend Alan tells me he has enjoyed a bunch of them, and he actually has copies in his personal library, and he's a grown-ass man. Anyway, the kids at the screening I attended, and a few of their adult handlers, who were all fans of the book series, really embraced it. And to an extent, I did too. I mean, I need to say, I was surprised at the setup, which is rather grisly for something geared to children. Here we go. The title character is the surgical solution when a police officer and his loyal dog are seriously injured on the job. I mean, life-threateningly, devastatingly injured. The human cop's head is damaged beyond repair, and so is the dog's body. So the doctors screw the dog's head onto the human's body, sew it up, and voila! Dog Man lives, sort of. I mean, the human brain's done, and the dog brain's in charge, which leads to some amusing behavioral quirks. Anyhow, Dog Man is back on the force, courtesy of the gruff but apparently lenient chief of police, who speaks with the familiar voice of Lil Rel Howery. Our canine-ish hero is still determined to solve crimes and to pursue his or their arch nemesis, Petey the cat, a villainous feline voiced by, Petey Davidson. And, obviously Dogman wants to bring Petey to justice. And the cast has comedic chops beyond those of Davidson and Howery. Isla Fisher voices a local TV reporter with a yen for the chief of police. Stephen Root is Petey the cat's grandfather, kind of a bastard. And Ricky Gervais lends his sneer to a nasty cyber-enhanced fish that is even more of a baddie than Petey the cat. And in fact, kidnaps Petey's kitten clone, Little Petey. And this kidnapping forces Dogman and Petey into an uneasy alliance. Although Dogman is a product of computer animation, it's got this willfully primitive, almost sketchy character design and settings, which are faithful to the look of the books. And it's a nice change of pace from the usual Pixar, Disney, Illumination, DreamWorks style. And meanwhile, the jokes, the puns, the general lunacy, all that comes at you fast and furious. Dogman was directed by Peter Hastings, whose CV is mostly DreamWorks TV shows. And I guess one of them is a few, Kung Fu Panda spun off a number of shows. And it was scripted by Dav Pilkey, the actual author of the Dogman books, as well as the creator of another popular book series for kids, Captain Underpants. So I expect that Dogman the movie is true to the sensibility of Dogman's daddy, if you will. Pilkey must have signed off on it. And even if not, I'm not a rabid fan of Dogman. Get it? Rabid? Dogman? It's
Nice.
silly. It's benign entertainment for the younger set with humorous references for the grown-ups. Dogman is in theaters.
Was that a recommendation?
It was.
Okay. Benign entertainment.
Yeah.
Can't hurt, right?
Yeah. I mean, a bit more of a recommendation. I stand a little more behind it than I do behind You're Cordially Invited, but certainly not as much as Companion. So, Kim, I wanted to tell people that on February 6th, this coming week, the 17th annual Mostly British Film Festival kicks off at the Vogue in San Francisco, the Vogue Theater at 3290 Sacramento Street. That's from the 6th of February to the 13th. And it's a whole bunch of movies that were spawned by English filmmakers and by various and sundry people in countries that were connected to England as colonies or part of the Commonwealth. And there's some really, really good ones, including a wonderful film about a survivor of a World War II battle who decides to show up at the big D-Day celebration. And he turns out to be the last of his group. It's called The Last Rifleman, and it stars Pierce Brosnan in a very lovely measured performance. There is a really cool kind of intrigue film about the early days of Israel and the Palestinian conflict in the 30s and 40s. It's called Shoshana. There is a lovely Bay Area premiere and maybe American premiere of a film called The Penguin Lessons, which is based on a true story about an English teacher in Buenos Aires back in the 70s as the local government upheaval starts to impact everybody. And it stars one of my favorite comedy actors, Steve Coogan. And there are many, many other movies, including restored The Red Shoes in a restored print, Paddington in Peru, the third and latest of the Paddington movies, and a couple of really fascinating documentaries, including one about the Merchant Ivory filmmaking duo of Ismail Merchant and James Ivory, and Made in England about another movie-making duo from the UK or from the Commonwealth. The films of Powell and Pressburger, and those are the guys that did The Red Shoes and other movies, including I Know Where I'm Going. It really looks like a hell of a selection, and I did want people to be aware of it. If you are interested in checking out the Mostly British Film Festival, tickets and series passes are available at mostlybritish.org and at the Vogue box office in San Francisco. I hope I'm back to catch a little bit of this stuff. I'm going to be heading back to San Francisco in a week or so. And even if I haven't, I have seen a number of the films that are on the schedule, and I'm going to be writing up a piece for the Voice of San Francisco on the Mostly British Film Festival, so be on the lookout for that.
It sounds amazing, and all you had to say was Pierce Brosnan, and I'm already on board.
I thought that was a lovely film. And some of the things are from the past couple of years. Again, Paddington in Peru and The Penguin Lessons, I think, will not have had their American releases prior to their showing at the Mostly British Film Festival. So you're going to be seeing some stuff in advance, and it's always a good time. I highly endorse the MBFF. Quick notes on TV shows. Do we have a minute or two?
I want to talk to you about streaming because I think I watched at least one of the ones that you're going to talk about. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Okay, so let's kick off with The Night Agent, which has reached its second season on Netflix, starring Gabriel Basso, who was in the recent Juror Number 2, which I thought was a pretty damn good film. And also, I love this, he played J.D. Vance in the movie of Hillbilly Elegy. How about that?
I did not know that. That's crazy. Okay.
It's fully crazy. So The Night Agent is spun off a novel by a guy named Matthew Quirk, and it's about an FBI agent who has been basically, he's been sent to the basement of the White House to take care of a phone as part of a kind of black ops unit. He's, taking care of business. And in the first season, he ends up back in the field, and he becomes brought into this sort of secret agency that takes care of, I guess, various and sundry spies and people working in the espionage realm that get in trouble. So he's sort of a troubleshooter, and he joins that group. And in series 2, he's confronted with some serious issues in terms of missing classified information. Boy, does that sound familiar if you've been paying attention to the news. And betrayals in the American government, and all kinds of geopolitical intrigue. And I'm about halfway through it, and I don't like it quite as well as the first season, but I'm still on board. I'm enjoying it. And I think that, I'm going to plow right through. I got about 3 or 4 episodes to go.
That's exactly what I thought. I liked the first series better, but the first season better, but the second season, it might not be as good as the first, but it's not bad. So it's entertaining still. Yeah.
It's caught me up, and his female counterpart, well, actually co-star Lucienne Buchanan is back opposite Basso as Rose Larkin, who was sort of innocent and pulled into the world of treachery and espionage in series 1. And they have a yen for one another. I miss Hong Chow from the first season. She played a very clever and sneaky government operative who was our hero, Peter Sutherland's contact when he joined as a night agent. I recommend it. I thought it was so far pretty good. Quickly, Harley Quinn is on its 5th season. Harley Quinn is based on the DC character that people must know from her portrayal by Margot Robbie in the movie. She's sort of an anti-hero. She's sort of a criminal. She was the Joker's girlfriend, and now she is in a relationship in this cartoon set of adventures with Poison Ivy, the villainess, and they're both sort of trying to take the do-gooder path. And it is profane and funny. It has a lot of DC Comics Easter eggs, and has absolutely no restraint when it comes to lampooning superhero issues, superhero characters, their quirks, and what have you. And Kaylee Cuoco is the voice of Harley Quinn, and she does a lovely job. And a lot of the supporting voice people include Alan Tudyk and Lake Bell and Tony Hale, some really talented comedic actors. And it's a comedy, and it's funny stuff. And again, it's pretty vulgar, so not for the kids. But if you are a grown-up who likes animated cartoons and aren't taking your kid to go see Dogman, Harley Quinn might do you.
And you've got one more, yeah?
Yeah, Creature Commandos, which had its run. By the way, Harley Quinn is on Max, which is the Warner Brothers fueled streaming service that's also connected to HBO. Creature Commandos had its first season run on Max, and I'm bringing it up because it's the very first project to come from the new regime running DC Comics films and television shows, led by James Gunn, the filmmaker responsible for the Guardians of the Galaxy movies at Marvel. And Creature Commandos is a kind of surprising kickoff for this new universe of DC Comics adaptations, which will continue with the new Superman, which is coming up in a few months and already has a lot of buzz thanks to various and sundry trailers. The Creature Commandos is based on a DC comic book about another government black ops type named Amanda Waller, who pulls together a crew of supervillains who either are seeking redemption or need to work off their sentencing, and sends them out into the field to do the dirty jobs that other people won't do. And there's a whole geopolitical thing about an Eastern European country under siege, and it's fairly amusing. And James Gunn, by the way, was responsible for the Peacemaker TV series at Max, and so he kind of knows the superhero genre. And I was entertained by Creature Commandos, but I was surprised that this is how he launched his incredible widespread revision of all the DC projects. And, I give it a tentative thumbs up for fans. But if you're not on board with this sort of thing, or you're not a comic book fan, I don't know that this would be your cup of tea. But again, the voice actors include Indira Varma and from Game of Thrones, and David Harbour, who has been Hellboy and was in the Marvel movie Black Widow. We're talking some talented people involved. And if it's your sort of thing, check out Creature Commandos, available for streaming like Harley Quinn's 5 seasons on Max. And I guess that's it.
Yeah, we'll recap it. You say, as far as movies, Companion, you said it cooks, it's got twists and turns and shockers, and though it's only January, it is your favorite American movie so far of 2025. That's Companion. You're cordially invited. You said, hey, it's better than expected. It's on Amazon Prime. You said it's not going to be a classic, but it's not bad either. Dogman, you said it's benign entertainment. You throw down a recommendation for Dogman. As for streaming options, The Night Agent on Netflix, we agree. You said it's not as good as the first season, but it's entertaining and watchable. Harley Quinn on Max, you said it's funny but vulgar. Creature Commandos, also on Max, you said it's entertaining, but you give it a thumbs up for comic book fans. If you're not a comic book fan, then maybe this one might not be for you. And that is the Culture Blaster Michael Snyder extravaganza on this Friday. Thank you so much.
Oh, you are most welcome, Tim, and my regards to you and Albert and Tony, and of course Mark in absentia, doing the Lord's work at KFI. He's the, he's the man on the scene. So we'll hopefully check back with you guys next Friday, and have yourself a lovely weekend, everybody. And go Warriors!
One of the things I didn't ask you is, did you see the Fire Aid concert last night?
I did, and I had a few moments that I really was excited about, not least of them being the quasi-Nirvana reunion helmed by Dave Grohl. I loved watching that, and I thought Dave Grohl's daughter did a great job up there on the mic. And as you know, it was great to see everybody participate for this extremely good cause. And as people in the chat noted, with the federal government not going to be forthcoming under the orange ogre, we're going to have to scramble and cobble together as much money as possible. So thank you, everyone who contributed to Fire Aid. It was a joyful show for a good cause.
Well, a lot of love for you in the chat, Michael Snyder. He comes and goes on a rainbow. Bye.
Bye.
Snyder, bye-bye, bye-bye. You can find, by the way, Michael Snyder's writings at thevoicesf.org. Thevoicesf.org is where you will find his writings on movies and streaming options and everything else. And thus ends the Mark Thompson Show. It's going to be an interesting weekend. We start it on Monday. We will have Gary Dietrich on the show, and we'll start talking about the politics of the weekend. Please don't miss it. It's going to be a great one. Mark will be back in the captain's chair for the whole show. A $5 super chat from Harry, who says, happy Friday. Enough grumpy Trumpy, time for the Red Jack. Indeed, head to the Red Jack in San Francisco. They're a great place. They've always got our back. There it is, Red Jack Saloon in San Francisco.
Don't they have a Kim beverage as well, like a Kim?
They have the Kimikaze, they have the Martini and the Maduro Mule, and all of that helps fund these shows that are near and dear to my heart. And so, thank you for that. Thanks to the Red Jack for the continued funding of that.
I'm Shadow
Albert
Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Al, for everything. Thanks,
We made
everybody.
it.
See you at the after party next. Please come subscribe. Bye-bye.